double checking that everything is okay, and we should be good to go now. A little bit of background on Advance. We are the first and only national Native-led organization dedicated to building political power in Native communities. We take a holistic approach to create an ecosystem that focuses on leadership recruitment, as well as support, civic engagement, data and research, and national coordination. We believe that when Native peoples and communities have access to national networks, innovative tools for organizing, and strong voter engagement strategies, pathways to leadership, we strengthen the health and well-being of all of our communities. Native political engagement has been directly and deeply limited by historical, legal, and modern barriers. This is especially true for Native women. Because of these barriers, Native peoples remain drastically underrepresented in government and at every level. According to the 2020 US Census and on our research, Native Americans, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians make up just 0.07% of elected officials, despite being at least 3.4% of the total US population. At Advance, we are dedicated to increasing that representation in all of our programming and including our Facebook Live conversations. A cornerstone of this effort to increase representation is the Native Leadership Institute, Advance's training program designed by and for Indigenous peoples. NLI offers a culturally grounded, cohort-based experience for Native leaders who are ready to step into elective office. Over the course of an intensive multi-day training, participants gain the practical skills and tools needed to run successful campaigns, all while being rooted in shared Indigenous cultural values. At Advance, we are committed to creating opportunities for development, connection, and visibility for Native leaders. We're working to change the narrative, build power, and take action so Native voices are heard at every level of leadership. Tonight, I'm joined by Allison Renville, born and raised on the Lake Traverse Reservation. She is Sisseton and Hunkpapa, as well as Omaha and Seneca-Cayuga. She has been a political fixture for over 20 years, she's the mother of two sons, aged 5 and 17, and currently lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. In 2016, as delegate for Bernie Sanders, she went to the Democratic National Convention and weeks later to Standing Rock, becoming a key voice in the #NoDAPL movement. After the occupation of her father's homelands in North Dakota, Renville created her own statewide political action committee, Dakotas for America, where she endorsed Native candidates and allies. After running for State Senate District 1 in 2018 and voicing concerns over racism and systemic party problems following a predictable primary split in the vote, Renville ran for South Dakota Democratic Party chair in 2019. This entire experience resulted in Ms. Renville exiting the state Democratic Party before her run in 2024 for Sioux Falls City Council at large, a run that brought national and federal attention to the issues that affect Native communities in both the city and state of South Dakota. Thank you so much for joining us, Allison. We are excited to have you. To start off our conversation, could you tell us just a little bit more about your journey as an activist? What inspired you to get involved?
Well, I kind of stumbled into politics accidentally. My mother at the time had been working for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. I think Stephanie Herseth was just really a huge influence for me back in the day because she was the first woman to get elected here in the congressional spot for South Dakota. And so getting kind of pulled into that campaign really showed me how much of a career people can make out of getting involved politically. And so just starting as like a stipend worker was enough for me to get fired up and start looking at more campaigns after that one. Some of the reasons why, though, I think I stay involved is because of the longevity in politics that I think it takes. We don't talk about how important it is to go into a room knowing that everybody is going to know each other once you get there. And, whether it's like a 4-year campaign, 2-year campaign, every single cycle, when it comes back up, sure, there's new people, but a good chunk, especially in Indian country, we're going to face a lot of the same opposition every single time, whether it's small town stuff, tribal stuff. It's really, it's just fun, and the more you turn into somebody who's going to be around and be consistent, the funner it gets. So like, if I'm really hoping this time around, I mean, I know this isn't necessarily anything to do with me, but I'm really hoping now we're going to see people returning back into the political scene as well.
And hopefully returning more to community as well. Um, your activism has long focused on raising awareness around violence against women and the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Most recently, you showed your work around International Women's Day in Sioux Falls. Can you talk more about what that demonstration specifically aimed to highlight and what message you hope to send to the public and policymakers? And in general, how
Uh,
was it? How was the turnout?
Oh, it was great. It was great. We had over 400 people or so, I think, at the peak. For one city block, it ends up looking like a lot of folks. And it was just really exciting to feel the energy. And the more people show up, the more you can assume, like I said, there's new people coming in. And so it was really kind of relighting the fire for me a little bit that first time. But then by the time we got to the Women's March, it was really nice. It was really nice. There's different generations, and we're also seeing people from different walks of life as well, whether they're former teachers or people who are retired or working former federal workers, things like that. They're all starting to come out now because, we're up against this like fascist regime in our presidency and all of his cronies around. It's really getting a lot of people fired up. I had a couple finance bros show up. There were some, like some tech bros. Like I've been approached by so many different people recently and specifically at the Women's Day event, with folks hoping to get involved. And a lot of it did have to do with Elon Musk, and this authoritarianistic society that we're all moving towards. Because I think in cities like Sioux Falls specifically, we're kind of on the cusp of like, are we going to be a metropolis or are we going to sit here and be like the way we are for who knows how long? Um, we're seeing this culture shift of where there's an uplifting of single men and single mothers and everybody who are here willing to work. And that's going to be something huge that a lot of cities are going to see as we start to experience like I want to call it like migration, but at the same time, it's like they're going to be climate refugees for, people who are running from floods or running from hurricanes and tornadoes everywhere else. Everyone's going to start coming inward. And so here in the Great Plains, we're all kind of like buckling down, trying to get ready and really reset where our values sit. Because, Christy Nome here in South Dakota, she really shook us up the times that she was here, whether it was causing division, whether it was creating false narratives. We were up against a lot of the same stuff that America was up against dealing with Donald Trump.
It's great to hear about the different backgrounds that showed up. That's something that in North Carolina, I know that has been happening with more town halls and just people from different backgrounds, but also intergenerationally showing up, like
Mhm.
full families. It's exciting. In addition to your background in activism, you've also been involved in multiple presidential campaigns, such as Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders. Have your experiences in political organizing around political campaigns shaped your approach to advocacy specifically?
Yeah, and I was really thinking hard about this question because I really didn't want to like give a cheesy answer, right? Because it's like, oh yes, of course we learned grassroots organizing and like all these other things, and which is all true. It's all true. The Obama campaign was really instrumental in teaching me how to door knock, how to answer phones, how to talk to people, because a lot of the times some campaigns could go into a small town like around the reservation where I grew up, and it just turns into like, okay, knock, 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 go and vote. Are you registered to vote? Like that's all it is. But with Barack Obama's campaign, because he was so genuine in his character and then also like still so brand new and needed to be like the voters needed to be educated on the presidential campaign or during the campaign. And so it was just so much fun to learn about him and to be able to carry the same values, because that's really something that was, I think, keeps me involved. And I want to segue that into getting involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign. You identify what you have in common with your candidate, and then that's what you carry the torch for, right? Because you want to convince someone or talk to the next person, not even convince, I don't want to say it like that, but you want to influence the next person's judgment based on their beliefs. and where they stand with you as a human, because, Ikje Wichasha, it's the common man in Lakota language. And it's just something that I've always been encouraged to look at. Who's there with you in the room, who is showing up for the people. Those are the people that you want to represent you, in not just city government, but in national government as well. We're really dealing with a lot of stuff here in South Dakota with the power that some of our electeds hold. And you mentioned town halls, and so like we're really struggling to figure out what that's going to look like, because no one's showing up for anything here either. But unfortunately, that's really that mindset that I've had now has really just been in the last few years. I've been passionate about candidates until now. But I think that's relatable. I really think that's a lot of the problem that we're having, is because we're not seeing quality candidates come out that you can see yourself in. And so it's like, everyone's voting for the president or something, or voting for the governor or something. It's a popularity contest in most cases. And so, how do we, again, start looking at the narrative and building that popularity, but at the same time having it be genuine? So those are the things I think I learned from both candidates, because they both really are who they say they are and have continued to be that same person. Did you like I tied it back around?
Yes, great. You've had experience with the, I guess, both sides of the aisle through activism, but also through running political campaigns yourself. What are some challenges that you've noticed when doing both of those on trying to influence policy directly through activism or advocacy? Are there barriers that are in place that you see, maybe specifically for Native women?
Um, I think it's just being taken serious. We can be told so many different stereotypical things about why we shouldn't be listened to, right? We're too emotional, or too wild, or you're too out there. And for me, it's always been like it's too much. I'm too much, right? Because I see the bigger picture. So it's like, if we're talking about, okay, right now gun violence is a big deal, and alcoholism is a big deal. I'm not going to sit here and be comfortable trying to just focus on these two things. I want to figure out why this person's going through whatever they're going through and what they've been through, and so it's like, even trying to, how do I want to say, um, incubate my own platforms and my own ideas and beliefs and stuff to stay focused enough, I think has been a really big challenge for me, because as a mother, as a Native woman, there are so many big macro issues that are feeling like that we can change, right? So even like pulling it back a little bit, and realizing and focusing on my own limitations and boundaries, I think has really been something too that has helped. But also, asking people for help has really been something that's, I think, the big the big challenge that ended up being the best, because I never used to be able to ask for help. It would just, go on and go on. And then now it's like, if I'm leaning on to like knowing everybody or no. So here's one thing. I'm a guy who knows a guy, right? So if I can trust myself that like this will come back around, or that I'll hear about it or something, and trust my role, oh goodness, all of a sudden I know everything. Oh my God, Lexi, I know everything about Sioux Falls. I know everything about, all of this stuff, but it's because I'm confident in my own role, right? Does that make sense? Like, because, even in Dakota culture, Lakota culture, we have societies, we have, our families and our village structures and all this other stuff. And so like, when you're comfortable and you're okay with who you are and you know where you came from, it makes it so much easier to go into a room when, frankly, you're going to be the only native there. And when it comes to a lot of the stuff that I've accomplished, it's because I didn't hear what I wanted to hear. And so that was another challenge too, is because then you have to either bite your tongue and try harder next time, or you gotta like buck down and speak up. And for some people, that's really hard. That's really, really hard, especially when you're likely going to be the only native in the room.
I know that I've heard from folks that that's an experience that is not just unique to you. What are some advice or some ways that you would give someone who has never run for office before, um, ways to navigate those barriers?
Well, looking at your Secretary of State's website is really big. I don't, sure, I could navigate and tell somebody, oh, let's check out this organization. Of course, let's go see Advanced, but the truth of the matter is that everyone's voting rules and election rules and stuff are all different in every state. So if you really want to get involved, one thing to do is to go to your Secretary of State's office first and look at your codes and your election laws and stuff and figure out how you can effectively be a part of it all. Because perhaps maybe you're good at fundraising. Maybe you're a people person. Maybe you're one of those guys who does know everybody. And so there what does that look like? That looks like a field director. That looks like, a campaign manager. And it looks like, someone who is a door knocker, So I mean, like if you can identify your own skills first, it makes the biggest difference going into a situation like this where you're going to end up looking at like pretty much it'll be like just a big whiteboard, right? And like these are all the rules. Da, 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 da. We've been through the trainings and stuff. It's going to be like this is all you're doing for like say for example like a FEMA training when you have your command station is set, they have like this big old table like that, and they're literally assigning a role for every single person in the room. And so going into a campaign to be able to imagine, okay, there's going to be like 12 different roles. Where's my skill set? And where's which in which, I'm really like here, I need like a TikTok to poke in there for me. But identifying your own strengths and stuff is really a big, huge thing because perhaps you're not ready to run this time, but you want to get the campaign experience. I was involved in probably 4 different cycles before I even thought about running. I didn't even run until after Standing Rock, and I only ran because I was telling everybody else to run. And so, even just identifying what you have to offer is a really big step.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Um, I know that you have mentioned before your passion with specifically MMIW. Can you talk more about like how that passion has reflected itself into policy that could affect like make lasting change? Are there any examples that you're thinking of?
Yeah, I was thinking of the introduction of Savannah's Act that was done by Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota. She had worked really closely with the United Tribes Chairman's Board, and someone from their camp got a hold of me and started asking for names about families and like who we could suggest being involved. And my cousin Lakota Renville was actually murdered in Missouri probably good 20 years ago already. And so her family has been fighting for justice this entire time. They're looking for answers and justice itself. And so it was really something that I figured that like what better way can I contribute to this cause by than by getting a family like that involved and helping them because although they were on their own personal crusade, showing them how easy it is to get them, get into the situation, really, really was like such a hands-on experience for them that has kept, some of the sisters really going and helped them in their own healing and stuff too. So it really led to a lot. And Savannah's Act itself is a really big deal, and I hope it continues to be protected by, not just our government, but by the Supreme Court, things like that too. So it's really it's hard. I don't want to sugarcoat anything because it's a lot of disappointment. And I mentioned needing to be taken serious, but when it comes to creating actual policy change, you really have to have that thick skin where it's probably going to take a few swings. Um, I ran for state senate and I think it was 2018, 2019 in Sisseton, South Dakota. And I created a relationship with my opponent. And after he had got seated and stuff, maybe like a year or so later, it was another state session. And because of the assumption that I was going to run again, he cited the Lake Traverse Sioux Treaty in his redistricting map. and they did it in committee and all of that stuff. So it's like because of our relationship and the trust that we built, he used that. So then I would have an advantage and have more voters on my side. And just kind of like trying to level the playing field a little bit. But that in itself was just based in respect. In having, like the valor to even want to come in and have that competition between the two of us. Unfortunately, my mom passed away that year, so I ended up not running. But my home district had a candidate that was being endorsed by this really thick QAnon political action committee here, and it was just a mess. Oh my gosh, Lexi, it was just a mess. Yeah, I'll tell you about it some other time, but it was just a mess. But at the same time, I mean, like this candidate was put in a position that they were assuming I would run for. And so, it's hard to not take some things personal and all of this other stuff too, but it all just helps along the way because I think it gives not just the voter, but my friends and other people who are interested in organizing the sense that it is that close and that impactful. And that one person can really, really change the trajectory of what's going on around us.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm sorry for your loss, but also want to thank you specifically for your work, especially on a topic that is so close to home. I know that it's hard to do that work, but it is so needed and so helpful.
And that
Changing
wasn't even the question that got my thing to shiver.
but changing gears a little bit to do some more, I guess, questions for folks to give them tangible ways to actually get involved. So, how can someone, especially those who have no experience with advocacy or activism at all, begin organizing in their own communities? What are some ways that they could get started?
Oh, I just love this question because it sounds so simple, but it's not. Getting to know your family, getting to know your friends, getting to know the people that you see on a daily basis that's your 50. So so in South Dakota, you only need 50 signatures to run for office. And so if you can think of 50 people, you have enough signatures to run for office. And so it's about getting them registered to vote. It's about like getting them, your signatures on the ballot, or what am I thinking of? Petition. And so it's just really it's really that grassroots. If you're really starting off, it's just really simple to say, okay, I have say 5 cousins over here that I know vote in this district, and I have this over here, and then I know that they're not in my district, but those 5 people. And so if you can all of a sudden you got your 25 people and you're halfway there. Like it's, we're all raised on like the doom story of like, STD testing, right? So it's like, oh, one person and 2 people in each, that person's this other person, so this person. And so like that with votes, I think like that with votes every time because I was like, oh my God, one good vote could be worth like 100 people. You convince one person to go out and fight for you, dude, hundreds of people. And so it's just like, it's about being genuine, and it's about realizing that you already have the support that you already need. And so even just, like I said, believing in yourself and identifying who's around you and finding those first 50 signatures, boss, you're already halfway there.
Thank you. What are some skills or tools that could help someone become a more effective advocate or organizer, especially in the, I guess, political landscape that we're in currently?
Mhm, 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 mhm. There's kind of I wanted to give like a happier response to this question. But the truth of the matter is we live in a really dark time. And so one tool that I always want to give to people is healing. If there's something that you've been through, write it down. Think about, all your experiences, whether they're negative or happy. Those are your platform points. If there's something, if you grew up in the foster system, like, there's a good chance that there's like a whole plethora of opportunity there of what you can fight for. If you've grown up with a single mom, for like me. And so my thing turns into like relationship issues or financial issues or education or healthcare and all that stuff. These, and it goes on because my grandmother was a nurse, because my mom spent my whole life going to college. These are little things that are already there. And so, I mean, I don't want to over complicate how easy it is because it is. It's, you know, if you get the skills down and you have the right people, like it should be fun. Like running for office should always be fun.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you. Um, Moving on a little bit into, I guess, like family and balance and work. You said you were a single mom. How are some ways that you balanced activism with everyday responsibilities like your family? And how are ways that other people could do that same thing, even if it's not having children, maybe like school, maybe a work schedule? What are some helpful ways to balance that?
My automatic answer wanted to say that you can't. It's a lot. Especially when it comes to having weekly protests or weekly meetings or all of these things that you end up having on your schedule. I wouldn't have been able to do half of everything that I've accomplished without my son. I have a 17-year-old who, frankly, is just like a really big homebody. So thankfully, he was a huge chunk of my support. But I mean, it was just really something. I think one of the biggest things I did in this last year was started looking into mental health counseling and seeing a psychiatrist and making sure that I was able to kind of learn how to decompartmentalize from what's what. Because you know when you start to advocate, especially for families or for someone who's been impacted, you're not that person. So the grief is different. The struggle of it all is really different. You know, and especially if it's some kind of injustice at the hands of the police, or you know, if someone's missing, or if you know, for you know, God willing, it's you know someone who's died or been murdered. Um, the grief is different. And so you have to almost teach yourself how to be able to put it down and pick it back up. And so when you know you're going to spend time with your kids, well, then, you know, I can't think about this right now. I have to be able to put that down. And then, you know, maybe not picking it up until the morning. Getting a sleeping schedule was really huge for me. For a while, I was waking up at like 5 a.m. just to be awake by myself in silence. And then, you know, look at the things that we were learning about cases and people, or even just like processing the conversations that go along with a lot of the advocacy. It's really hard, but I think finding a strong support system and being able to learn to communicate with my friends, not just my boundaries, but you know, my expectations. Because as problematic as we all are, you know, we're all experiencing the same thing. We're all products of people who were in boarding schools or removed from their homes, or people who are, you know, just displaced in general. So to be able to learn how to connect with someone was really huge too. And so being without getting too cheesy about it, self-awareness. Self-awareness is so huge. It's so important because, you know, if you can't handle something, then you shouldn't. And, you know, being able to have that self-awareness is a big deal. And it's part of like the intellectual click that we have to have and say, you know what, I can't pick this up right now. But 24 hours, 48 hours later, something else might happen. And hey, you know what? Okay, sure, let's do it. And but like I said, it's cheesy to say. I don't want to cop out because you really do have to learn how to separate your life versus the work. And being able to call it work is a stigma in itself too, because is helping a relative work? You know, I'm not getting paid for this. So is it not work? It's work. It's work because it's your emotional labor, it's your mental health, it's like all these other things that go along with it too. But if if it's meant to be, it'll be everything that you need it to be. And I mean, as long as you know, you take care of yourself, you got to take care of yourself. And that's really what's most important, I think. I try.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point. Activism and advocacy is usually really hard work, emotionally, physically, just spiritually. What are ways that you keep yourself from burnout when dealing with that, especially with it's issues that you are passionate about and you want to give your all to? How do you say no? How do you choose when to say no?
Hmm. Um, I hardly say no, but when I have to, it's because I like I got to learn who like what my triggers were and like what kinds of stuff were too heavy for me to pick up. Like, if I spoke on boarding schools a little bit. I worked at a campaign around the Tekawitha Tekawitha orphanage in Sisseton, and I ended up getting dozens of elders calling me to tell me about their horror stories about sexual abuse and violence against kids and stuff like that. And that was heavy. That was really, really heavy. And it became kind of a crusade there for a little bit. And thank God it was included in the conversations around the boarding schools and stuff because it wasn't a boarding school. It was an orphanage. And being able to come back to say, okay, I do have something to do with this. This is, I don't want to get too cheesy again. I'm going to keep saying that because I'm so just like terrified of being just goofy. Um, my grandmother had something to do with she was a nurse in the hospital while this was all going on. So like I grew up knowing all of these stories. And so, but actually being able to like set stuff down and then turn around and pick it back up to talk to a whole new set of people, that whole fresh ears that didn't have any idea that this happened, that became really hard, and then one of the pastors that I worked with, Father Richard Zephyr, passed away during some of the stuff that we were working on too. So there was a whole other type of grief that came along with it. And so even being able to talk about that grief and to carry that grief has been really huge. But because we're having a collective experience, because I'm not alone in who I am and all the experiences I've had, especially as a Native woman, as a Lakota woman, Dakota, we've experienced all these things together. And so even getting out of my own head and being like, you know what? I'm not I'm not extraordinary. I'm not alone in my experience, which it goes back to being Ikjewichasha, right? I'm just a common person. I'm not any better than anybody else, all these things. So it takes a lot of conditioning. It takes a lot of conditioning just to absorb the tools enough within yourself. And self-care, I think, is really, really something huge for me.
If you don't mind sharing, what are some ways that you care for yourself? What's your favorite form of self-care?
Oh. Um, I like to go down my list of people. I have probably a good 10 people. If one doesn't answer, the next one won't, this one does. And then you just go down until you catch one. And if you make it all the way down, by the time you get back to the top, they start calling. And so it's like being able to rely on my friends and to talk. We listen and we don't judge type friends. That has been everything to me. Being able to talk to my family or kind of pop in here and there, and talk to whomever in my support system has been really crucial because I'm a twin. I was, I'm a conception to birth. I've always had somebody with me. I have a twin brother at home, and although we're not close, I still have a lot of the same tendencies. So I need my life to be witnessed. I need somebody to talk to at the end of the day. So it's just been really nice. It's been really nice to be able to um help take care of other people who in turn help take care of me. Community, we were saying that.
That gave me goosebumps. I'm gonna steal that. The list of 10, I need to be better about calling people. That's gonna be my new tactic when I just have nothing to do. Um,
Oh, and because if you only have two people and neither one of them want to answer, it's just the end
yeah,
of the world. You could jump off a bridge, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't even matter anymore. But if you got 10 people, one of them will answer
yeah, yeah. And call you back too.
and call you
Hold you
back. Yeah.
accountable. Yes, exactly. Okay. That really concludes the bulk of our questioning. Well, I have two more questions that are really fun questions, they're unrelated. So can you tell us a time in your life that you are extremely proud of, anytime at all?
I I think the last 3 years and this project and what I've built here in Sioux Falls is something that I will never live down. There, like something exciting happens to me every single day where I am just like, holy smokes. But it's because, I came into Sioux Falls with the intention of eventually running for office. I wanted to get to know the organizations that were doing the work. And I'll tie that back to one of the questions earlier. Um, was that, you get into your space and then you identify who's doing the work. whether it's like community organizations, nonprofits, like whatever it is, there's probably a coalition already being built somewhere. And so I came in, figured that out, kind of got invited to some conversations and started meeting people. And then once I figured I could probably run for city council, I dug deeper. I dug deeper. I got on the dating apps and I started looking for specific people in the city. I matched with like cops and people who look like they could be like informants, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And it really gave me a really good perspective on how to go about my campaign. And so for maybe like the first 2 weeks, we really didn't have any events or anything. You know, the first month, of course, is for signature collection. And so I looked back at my past and was like, what is my passion, right? And before politics, it was music. And so I recruited a bunch of stage singers to do an event with me. So we had an open mic and I got 40 signatures. And so it was like really cool. It was really cool. And it was just embracing my already existing personality. And so I was really like I felt like I was really genuine in a lot of the stuff that I was doing because like I said, if they don't take you serious and you're telling them the truth, they're gonna think it's wild, right? So everybody thought I was wild. Everybody talked about it. And you know, I had the police chief here tell me, he's like, oh, if you were talking about all 10 things last year, I can only imagine, you know, this he said to see it come to fruition, I can only imagine how heavy it was a year ago, right? Because like I'm not talking about all the heavy stuff anymore because we've made progress. It's been over 230 days, or no, over 225 days so far, since the Sioux Falls Police Department has had a police involved shooting. And that is huge. I don't get to say it enough, and I will tell anybody who listens, but you know, we had a huge hand in holding the police accountable, where they've actually shifted the culture of it all, where they no longer open fire on people. That's huge. I wanted to stay happy about it, but I'm trying to keep the momentum going. But this is huge for me. And it really stemmed off of a lot of the work that we were doing. Because during my campaign, we had a demonstration, and it was because of a kid was he's not a kid, we're the same age. A man was he was assaulted by the police officer and tackled and stuff like that, and he was misidentified. But it was caught on camera, and then so we had a demonstration in front of the prison and all of this stuff, and it was a really good thing. And it led to the Department of Justice reaching out to talk about, you know, different civil liberties and stuff being violated here in Sioux Falls. And so being able to do those briefings, we had a listening session, we had all of this other stuff going on. I was able to see like tangible results in the relationships with our higher congressional people. Senator Rounds specifically, his relationships have really lifted up a lot of the issues that I care about, that he has with the chairman. And then, our governor now has reset his relations with the tribes and a lot of the different programs that are affiliated with everything. And so, just being able to see how much has like our trajectory has switched a little bit with Secretary Nome. She's now at DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and no longer our governor. And so it's really different. But it's definitely in a good way.
It's exciting to hear about all the change that is happening, and I'm so hopeful for Sioux Falls. That is really, really amazing about the police department. Last question. Spring is in full swing now. Do you have any spring rituals or traditions that you find joy in?
Oh. Well, I started opening my windows again. When you smudge and stuff, you're supposed to be opening your windows and letting everything go and everything and cleaning and stuff. And so it's been really nice to also look at my altar and see what it is that I was praying for 6 months ago. What was I looking for the winter? You know, what was it? What did I want to gain this winter, and see how it's going to influence the next part of my year. Because what is the summer going to look like? What are we manifesting, for the next 6 months? And so I really just like to I just like to pray. I like to burn medicines and drink teas and do all the tradish stuff that I'm supposed to. Maybe make a ribbon skirt or something. I made a ribbon skirt like a week ago with my friend too, and it was purple. So yeah, we're halfway to spring over here.
One of my favorite colors. That's exciting. Well, Allison, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I've enjoyed it, and I know that our viewers have too. Um, to everyone else, thank you so much for joining us this evening and watching. If this conversation has inspired you to learn more about how you can be a change in your community, we would love to talk with you. You can learn more about the Native Leadership Institute and our leadership training programs by checking out our website, advancenativepl.org, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more information about events coming your way. Hope everyone has a great night and keep showing up for your community.